times a year, for a week at a time, I head for Strasbourg. It was very interesting how that all came about. I won't bore you with it. But the fact is that the Council of Europe is focused upon democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. And I sit on its subcommittee that deals with migration, a particularly hot topic at the moment. And for the last 4 years, I've been going back and forth, and I've now got to know quite a lot of people from Italy and all around the continent, all 46 nations. We've gone through a crisis when Russia invaded Ukraine and expelled Russia. We gave them the benefit of the doubt after Georgia and Crimea and Donetsk, but this time we said it's too far. And how emotional a moment was it when the Ukrainian delegation, all women, because their men were fighting in the army, all women, lowered the Russian flag, and we expelled Russia from the Council of Europe. People said, well, you should keep them in, because talk is better than war. And we'd done that 3 times, that's the point. And 4 times they had expelled themselves, really. So that was a very interesting moment. Now, Hugh's dad has been on the Council of Europe for a lot longer than I, but he's not now. But in the bits of it that appoint judges to the European Court of Human Rights, what our present Prime Minister calls a foreign court. The scandalous, I would say. I mean, first of all, it was the British who set it up. Secondly, every country has a judge on it, so do we. It's as British as it is Hungarian, or Italian, or Spanish, or whatever. And to call it a foreign court is quite simply indulging in loose talk. But there it is, in Strasbourg. Tomorrow I will go. It's by election that we get sent there. A new parliament comes, and the new parliament has to elect 30 to 36 people to go and represent it from all parties in both houses in Strasbourg. And I wasn't going to do that. I'd been on the front bench for the Labour Party, for DCMS, Digital Culture, Media and Sport, and shadowing for Wales. And then COVID came, put an end to all of that. And I was just sitting thinking, well, it was a cameo career, I enjoyed it. And a little message came through on my machine that said, nominations for the Council of Europe end at 6 o'clock. At that time, I was looking at Dominic Cummings on television on the lawn of number 10 Downing Street, telling us what a wonderful man he was. And so I thought, well, why not? So I sent a message expressing an interest. The poll was taken, I kept top of it. So off I went to Europe. Now, I've been a Methodist minister all my life. I've been in the House of Lords for 20 years this year. I've been very, very clear about the way politics and a position in leadership of the pulpit must manage their affairs in a strictly organised way. I took the Labour whip. I've been a member of the Labour Party longer than I've been a Christian. I didn't see that I had to give that up. And anyway, I didn't want to go into a chamber and deny myself the opportunity to do the politics. Politics is too important to leave to politicians. And so I took the Labour whip, but never got a single complaint that I was abusing my rights as a Methodist minister by declaring my political allegiance in this way. It led me to think, of course, that I wish there were a lot more thinking of that kind. What's wrong with declaring to people that you are a member of a particular party? What's wrong with that? I mean, you know, I can see potential moments, should we say, of disagreement, but then we have to learn how to disagree too. Pretending that we're not, or hiding what we are, is hardly a formula for making a success of anything. Anyway, I've always been very clear about it. So I went on retirement in 2017 to my party leader and said, well, I'm retired now, I'm no longer bound by the same constraints. If there's any job you want me to do, and she said, well, you're a party whip. As from now, you have to have a portfolio of responsibility. We're giving you DCMS. Well, Department of Culture, Media and Sport. I loved culture, media and sport. I've been a reporter, I've been a journalist forever. I work on the BBC quite a lot. Sport, well, that's my middle name. And culture, well, I go to art galleries and do all the things and concerts and stuff. I thought, this is a cinch. And so I said, yes, are you sure? Yes, are you really sure? I thought there's something about this that she's not telling me. And I said, yes, I'm really sure. And she said, well, the D doesn't stand for department, it stands for digital. And so ever since then, I've been, and by the way, she said it was July. In September, we have a data processing bill that we're going to have to process through Parliament, and you're going to be on the front bench doing it. So I spent the whole summer learning about digital, I can tell you. It was the Act of Parliament, the GDPR, that looked at the debate between freedom of expression on the one hand and the privacy on the other, how to protect children on the internet, etc., etc. It's a very composite bit of legislation, and I was there doing it. At the same time, Wales. Of course a Welshman wants to do Wales. And Wales has got a devolved government, not much to do with them. Just have the name and boast about it. It was post-Brexit, and we were debating the relationship between a devolved government, all of whose legislation, every bit of it, had come through Brussels and the European Union, would now conduct itself, that now that there was, Brexit had taken us out of Europe, and all the legislation had to be renegotiated, reimagined. It was very, very complicated indeed. And then COVID came to release me, and now I'm on the Select Committee for Digital and Communications. We've been looking at how to regulate the regulators. We've just finished a report, I'll get a report just on Tuesday, on AI and large language models. We've looked at the freedom of the press, we've looked at the future of Channel 4, we've looked at the licensing of BBC, and so on. 7 very important reports when we gather witnesses from the industry from right across the board. People who are household names to people who are operators and so on and so forth. But it is the idea of the Council of Europe that I want really to impress upon you. There's almost nothing synodal anymore for British people when it comes to Europe. We are on our own, we're looking after our own borders, we don't want foreigners interfering, we have protocols to manage this, that and the other. And I have to say, as a member of the Migration Committee, when I started, it was possible, they asked me to write a paper for the 70th anniversary of the Convention on the Status of refugees and displaced people. And I wrote that and went to Geneva to consult the UNHCR, and I went to different countries to see how they were doing things, and so on. I was able, in all conscience, to say, this convention is largely the work of British lawyers. It's they who put it together, and they were, of course, in 1945, anxious about displaced people in Europe in the aftermath of the war. But the principles at the heart of that convention, which are non-discrimination, anybody who arrives in a country saying they want to leave a place where they're being persecuted has a right to be heard. They're not criminal or illegal until, after proper process, they've been proved to be. And that's the problem at the moment. That processing is not happening. But they are, in the meantime, being demonized, turned into fodder for election campaigns, and we are undermining a core principle of the convention. The second one is non-penalization. You can't punish people who have already been punished by leaving home. Most of them didn't want to, in order to come here. And the third is non-refoulement. You can't turn them back. You can't cast them off. You can't deny responsibility for them. Well, that's how it was when I presented my report and got it approved in Rome, when I went there to talk on behalf of the committee, which had approved it 100%. Now is the document to be endorsed by the Council at large, and it was accepted again 100%. That was just 3 or 4 years ago. Now, I'm almost ashamed to recognize myself as British in those consultations. I mean, we've had the the Nationality and Borders Act, we've had the Illegal Migration Act, and we've now got the Rwanda Act. I mean, we are cutting the ground from under our own feet and robbing ourselves of legitimacy in the discussions that need to take place on the question of migration. Europe at the moment is slipping away into, populist sort of right-wing sort of stuff. I mean, we've got Italy, we've got Denmark, and we've got the Netherlands now, we've got Hungary, we've got Poland, and it's so important for us to give ourselves the possibility of looking critically at the way we've managed these affairs for the last 60 or 70 years, with a view to improving them for present circumstances. But if those seeing our readiness to improve things in that way, see it as an opportunity to undermine the wretched thing altogether and sink it, then we're all lost. If everybody's acting on their own, then it's a bad day for Europe. I mean, it's just so silly, this stop the boats idea. The boats bring such a tiny proportion of those who migrate to the United Kingdom. And it's true that we need to do something about it because it's dangerous. My daughter, who's an economist, and his mother, wrote a three-part report for the National Society of Parental Cruelty to Children, or no, it was the Children's Society, about migration from the Horn of Africa. And if only we could put into those countries, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Sudan, Somalia, and so on, if only we could put in a kind of well thought out, and perhaps in collaboration with other European countries, development program, the question of migration would be reduced hugely. And what have we done instead? We've cut our development budget by a third, and a huge proportion of what's left we're using to house refugees from Ukraine. Well, synodal for me means collective agreement around principles that honour the human rights, the rule of law, and democracy. That's what synodal means for me. And I was interested to hear about synodal within the church and between the churches, but it's about time the Christian presence in Europe understood what a weight of influence it could have if it looked outwards for a change. Why strain at the gnats of homosexuality and sexual identity whilst we're swallowing the camels of the disintegration of all that has bound Europe together in the post-Second World War years? I just wish, I mean, my own church, Methodist Church, has never once thought that I might have a voice on some of the subjects that in its own internal departments is dealing with, even though I'm meeting people from across Europe all the time. At the moment, I'm particularly interested in people from Kosovo who are seeking membership of the Council of Europe. It was Britain that set it up. Winston Churchill and Ernie Bevan. And what do you have thought about it? The kind of Morecambe and Wise of post-war politics. Winston Churchill and Ernie Bevan. And here we are, selling ourselves short, as well as the modalities that were put in place by them. I'm proud that it's as a Methodist minister that I have a voice, that I'm able to go to visit different countries and exchange views with them. I chaired just a month ago a visiting delegation from Morocco. Now, Morocco and Spain have a particular way of sort of looking at what is a problem for them about getting across that little bit of water between Africa and Europe. And here was this marvellous delegation. I chaired it, and I was flanked in my sort of presiding chair with Europe with Union Jacks, 2 flags, and beyond them, the flags of the Council of Europe. But the Council of Europe loaned its flag to the European Union. It's the same flag. So I could pretend that the European Union was still alive in London and enjoyed that very much indeed. Well, I could go on and on. I'm down to speak on 3 debates next week in the plenary. One is on the use of AI and cyber technology in electoral campaigns. And as a person who's been on the Digital and Communications Committee, I felt I could do that. Another is on the abuse of children, and another one is on torture. But it would be in the committee that I will have most to say. They renew their committee every January, and until they find a chairman, then the oldest person in the room chairs the meeting until a new chair is elected. It's just terrible that I continue to be the oldest person in the room year after year. I just wish there could be something done about that. But for all that, I will chair on Monday the meeting of the Migration Committee as we get a new chair, because our old chair, Theodoros Rossopoulos, a wonderful Greek politician, has now been made the president of the council itself. A great friend of mine, and I look forward to that enormously. So, all I've done is rather breathlessly take you through some of the things that preoccupy me at the moment, and I tell you, it's as much my work as a Methodist minister to do these things, looking outwards, as it ever was to deal with questions of sexual identity and all the other trivia that we tend to lose so much of our time on. That's how I see it. If you don't like it, tough. And just the final word, I was once at a reception when Her late Majesty the Queen was present, and we had a little group, and she was making her rounds, and I was the president of the conference at the time. When she came to our little group, and I was introduced as the president of the Methodist conference, she said, "And what does the president of the Methodist conference do?" she said. I said, "Well, 50% of my time I look after the flock, and the other 50% of my time I represent the flock to the wider world beyond the church." She said, "Oh, a bit like my job," she said. Which I thought was rather nice. So thank you for indulging me with this opportunity to share these thoughts. I'm always happy to come back and tell you what's happening. But as I say, being a Methodist minister was never for me about being holy or sanctimonious or inward-looking or feeding on our own entrails. It was always about finding the right formula for engaging with the world around us, which is committing suicide as we go through our interminable discussions within the fold. So God help us all to rise.